So hello everyone and welcome. We have Carol Sparks from Thompson Rivers University with us, who will talk to us about designing an online course, opportunities and challenges to innovate using Gagne's 9 events of instruction. So over to you, Carol.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for joining me today. Yes, I guess the title of my presentation is already out there, so let me just proceed. Okay, before we get started, I want to do a territorial acknowledgement. Thompson Rivers University Open Learning is located on the Tk'emlúps to Secwepemc territory that is situated on the southern interior of British Columbia within the unceded traditional lands of Secwepemc-Gulu, the Secwepemc Nation. I am grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and play in this beautiful territory. And this is a picture of from the university campus of mountains, Mount Peter and Mount Paul, as well as the newest installation of the wolves. And you can see snow in the far left on top of the mountains. It's such a beautiful place. I've been here three years and just love it. So in this presentation, and let me just minimize that so I can see it, I'm going to focus on instructional design, online course design. I've got an example for you using Gagne's events of instruction, a few of them anyway. And I'm going to talk about accessibility as a possible innovation. This presentation was submitted for last year's conference and before COVID-19 had us all in lockdown. So things have changed since then. And so the focus of this presentation has expanded to incorporate experiences with accessibility since then. So a little bit about instructional design, not knowing where people's backgrounds are when they're coming to this presentation. And our focus is on innovation, but yet instructional design requires, has some structure to it as well. And I think the balancing of those elements are important. And there's a foundation to instructional design that it's all based on. And this picture, it sort of can give you the feeling of, okay, the blank page perhaps, and trying to create something, yeah, when you're not sure what you're starting with. So at TRU, Thompson Rivers University, just to give you a little bit of perspective, we design courses as part of a team with a course developer who writes the course and a course consultant who reviews it. And they review it as it relates to subject matter. We also have an extended team, including graphic designers, audiovisual experts, intellectual property for copyright, editors, and production team who put the course on the learning management system. So there's quite a large group, but I work as the instructional designer. My role is as a project manager and also as a pedagogical expert to ensure that the course is pedagogically sound and works as a learning experience. We design asynchronous courses for the most part that students can start at any time and can take up to 30 weeks to complete, and they can still ask for extensions beyond that. Asynchronous means that there's no live elements or requirements to work with other students. So we really have to keep that in mind when we're designing a course. So instructional design, before we consider innovation, I just wanted to touch on the core of instructional design, things that we are told basically we cannot change. So we're given course description and course learning outcomes that have been approved in the higher levels of the university senate. Um, and that's our structure. By course learning outcomes, in case anyone's new to that terminology, I'm referring to the part at the beginning of course, usually, where it refers to what students will be able to do by the end of the course. So by the end of this course, you should be able to, and then each bullet point tends to start with a verb that's measurable to describe what they should be able to do. And this is often based on Bloom's taxonomy and the different levels of knowledge. So it's important that people know whether they need to be able to just recognize something or whether they need to be able to explain it or apply it. All are different levels. And then, of course, course alignment between the assessments and the course learning outcomes, and the activities meaning not graded, that are there to support the learning needed to successfully complete the assessed elements. So the image showing here shows a starting point on the left, or at least it's my left, but then it has an opportunity or many opportunities to innovate. Little refresher on Gagne's 9 events of instruction. I learned about Gagne's 9 events in my master's program back in 2000. I've been doing instructional design in some form since then, but it's changed certainly over the years. And there's certain elements of Gagne's 9 events that I still find helpful. And those, I mean, it's all helpful, but the ones I'm focusing on for this presentation are the first 3: the gain attention, informing learners of the objectives, and stimulating recall of prior learning. And on the left, you'll see another example of our wolf sculpture that's at our Thompson Rivers University, as though it's howling at the moon trying to create the course. So the example that I have here is from a biochemistry course. And let me just check my notes. This is an example from a biochemistry course that when I was working with the subject matter expert and was given the materials initially, I had trouble understanding a word of it. It went straight in to the deep end of a topic that I had little familiarity with. And they do say that sometimes it's better as an instructional designer if you don't know the material, because then you're not arguing with the subject matter expert on their expertise, but you can act as the student who doesn't understand the material. So with that in mind, to gain attention, you have some options. Sometimes you can use an image to ground an abstract concept or a scenario to show a situation when the information that follows will help solve a problem. With this one, I wanted to describe a little bit about the audience, the rationale, and the description. So given these courses have no prerequisites, so it's open. That's the idea behind the open learning, is that it's more available to people who want to take the course. So these courses have no prerequisites that are required. There can be suggested ones. Students can take 30 weeks to complete them, like I said, so they don't need to ask for extensions, or they can hand in their assignments anytime throughout. We do provide a schedule of how they can complete the course within a regular semester framework. So it's important to recognize that students may be starting the course with varying levels of readiness. So the rationale for this activity is in an attempt to meet the students where they are and provide a brief refresher on the topic. It's particularly important to create an opportunity to, as Ganya would indicate, stimulate recall of prior learning. This will help students for whom it may have been a long time since they took the prerequisite. So if this is good for, even if there are prerequisites for your course, because maybe it's been a few years or a few semesters or a pandemic in between when they took the course, or perhaps they never took the prerequisite. It also helps the students to see how the material that follows is relevant and relates to the basic information. Yeah, so that they've got a stepping off point. It's good pedagogy. This activity is positioned early in the module. So module might be a week's worth of material. And the module title was polysaccharides, and it's a third year biochemistry course. It's located after an introduction and the course learning outcomes, but before what we would consider new information that the students would be getting. So a description of what I have on the screen, because depending on what you can see there, I'll just describe it. This activity asks students to watch a video about carbohydrates and sugar. It not only says to watch the video, but it indicates why it's of value to watch it. Just watching the video can be quite passive. The activity makes the learning active by asking the students to do something with this information. For example, it reads, after you watch this video, make a table in your learning journal classifying carbohydrates as monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides with example. Also include simple and complex carbohydrates in your table, noting the difference between them. This active element ensures that the design choice leads to a successful learning experience and an artifact or notes that they can refer back to, excuse me, refer back to when needed to understand the new information. 1 second. When we think of innovation, we think of something that perhaps not everyone else is doing. So this activity could be innovative by making it more accessible. Besides making it active, because on the one extreme, it could be just watch this video with no explanation of why, what you could do with it, or that sort of thing. Making it, considering the accessibility elements of your course, can be innovative if it's not being done at your institution or with the people you work with. So innovation, what may be innovative to one group may not be to another. The visual presentation is appropriate for the intended audience, not only through the content included in the video, but by noting the duration, which you can see on the top line, and ensuring it is reasonably short video to serve the purpose of a quick overview. So if you put in something that was too complex, it would be inappropriate and wouldn't work. If you don't ask them to do something with it, it may be something that just gets skipped or watched while they're distracted. If the video was made in-house, it would have included transcripts, but as a YouTube video, it has captions. At a minimum, it explains what the students will expect to find in the video. The activity explains what students will expect to find in the video. And the video, in this case, is by osmosis. So we think of creativity and innovation. I submitted this proposal when I was working on a course that was called Creativity and Innovation. So one of the premises of that course is that um, creativity and innovation is not something that necessarily just occurs to you, but there's a structure and there's a way to go about increasing your opportunities to innovate. So an example that was used in that course that was trying to come through was the idea of choosing a problem that you'd like to address. This could be a social problem, a problem, um, yeah, that you think in your life is not perfect, so there are problems. Choose one and then think of 10 new ideas on how to solve it. Uh, each day, perhaps, or each week. Uh, and one of it sounds like such an easy idea, but apparently one of the challenges is for people to continue to come up with those ideas. The first day it's easy. The second day it's like, oh, right, I almost forgot. And the third day is gone before you even realize you didn't put in your 10 new ideas. Um, So, and of course, all this building of new ideas. So, after a week, you've got 70 new ideas. Um, you want to make sure that you take the time to review these ideas and evaluate their viability. But almost like brainstorming, you don't want to start throwing things out before you actually get them on paper. Let me just see. So, okay, so I worked with a colleague. Um, Carolyn Tier, and we used this approach to come up with a name for a WordPress site that we were creating to help share information and what we were learning about accessibility when designing courses. We wrote lists of names, um, long lists of names, and eventually realized that what we wanted to take people through was getting them one step closer to an accessible online document, not necessarily making every document 100% accessible. So in a, I moved here from Ontario, where accessibility is legislated by law, and there's um, firm guidelines on what needs to be made to what level accessible by which years. And I moved to British Columbia, where it's not legislated, but there's great interest in it. And I've attended some sessions about it. So um, I've worked together with Carolyn Tier, our production manager, and I'm sure there's a longer name for her than that. But she's been here a long time, and when there are accessibility requests, they stop at her desk, and so we worked together to create a document that talked about ways that people could proactively make their courses and their files accessible, just any even communications between people, because the idea of accessibility is that you shouldn't have to ask for materials to be made in a way that are available to most, so that most people can use them. So that doesn't mean just for students, that could mean between colleagues as well. So, but we're all learning, so we don't claim to have all the answers. Uh, so I wanted to just introduce the accessibility WordPress site that we've created on the idea that it would be taking you one step closer to an accessible document. The website is called onestep.truebox, TRU for Thompson Rivers University, truebox.ca. And, oh yes, so I'm looking at oh right, the time. And of course we're in different time zones here. So I just wanted to draw attention to, sorry, that's to make sure that I knew when 20 minutes was up. Um, Key accessibility checks. Um, the There's simple, small things that anybody can do when they're checking their document. So things such as using headings in Word or Moodle or whatever tool you're using, being aware of issues around font and color, uh, hyperlinks, how they're created, ensuring they're unique, and that they're embedded in the wording. A lot of this we wanted to focus on as it relates to screen readers, because there's universal design for learning that highlights points that are important for everybody to learn, but it doesn't put the focus on the person who uses the screen reader. And I must say, just in the last day at this conference, I've heard the concerns around materials not being prepared so that a screen reader could use them. So I feel like this is topical for this audience as well. So there are hyperlinks, tables and lists, audio, video, and image check. So the website is set up as a checklist so that you can have a quick look through. Have you done these various things as they relate to these headings? Then if you need more information, there is a link that has more information as if you need it. But if you don't need it, you just need a quick checklist. You have it, it's all on the first page. So I had timed this so that it was roughly 20 minutes. And then I was told that that the timing would go to allow me half an hour with questions. I'm not sure if we have our presentation coming after.
Well, there's good news and bad news.
Okay.
I think it's great news that we can have Carol for an extra half hour because due to unforeseen circumstances, our presentation, le résultat et implication pour la pratique d'une recherche action formation sur la classe université, donc 4 cégep et 10 universités, we are not going to have that presentation. So you are all welcome to continue on with us for another half hour. We have a good half hour, 3:15 Eastern. That would make it your out west lunchtime, a quarter afternoon. We'll go until then with Carol.
Okay, and we had discussed this before I started the presentation, and I did say that I had extra slides that go into the website, the onestep.truebox.ca. So I'm happy to go into that, but I'm also happy to take some questions at this point. Is there anything, are there any questions?
I'll invite everyone to use chat. You can always come off your mic if you like, but chat is available to you at the bottom of your screen. So feel free to go ahead in there and I'll just check Carol.
Thank you. I'll take a sip of water.
I don't have any questions yet.
Okay, and I am interested if people are would like to share ideas for this website, this WordPress site. When you get to look at it, if you're interested in collaborating, expanding, it's also an open resource. So we've found information on a lot of different websites, but we're amazed at how difficult it was to find it all in one place. There were many places where we thought, oh, this is already built. and it really wasn't built out to the degree that either we needed it or it wasn't all in one place. So we thought there is a need for this. So we hope that you'll take advantage of that. Um, and what I will do with the at least some of the extra time is to take you through some of this website in more detail, and you can learn a little bit more around accessibility. This may be old news if you're in Ontario, perhaps, but then it depends on the area that you work in. If this is new information or not, it can be a good refresher. But it's yeah. Okay, these were some of my extra slides, so I apologize if anything is not looking as polished as the first slides. This was actually an example of a way of making your course interactive. This one's here just for fun, but just as an example of um, pausing in the middle of your materials and asking people questions about what they just read. It provides an opportunity for them um, to test their own recollection of what it is that they've learned. And the show answer that's highlighted there in blue would just be an opportunity for them to do a self-check. So again, it's a short way for students to become more engaged with the material. These are very simple questions, but they could certainly be more complex. This one is from, well, part of it, except the is about the headings. So when on the onestep.truebox.ca, there's a section on headings, and it says there should be at least one heading, and you should use the heading styles that are built in, as opposed to just making the font larger and bolder and a different color so that it looks like a heading. The heading styles in a Word connect to table of contents features when you're using the review feature. And it also connects with screen readers. You can, when you're using a screen reader, you can ask it to read out all the heading ones so that you get a sense of what the table of contents looks like, or read out all the headings. So it's important that headings are sequential and nested. So on the right, except for the add screen of a screenshot of a Word document, it is an example of how a module might be laid out, indicating the different subheadings as well. And so that somebody using a screen reader could navigate this document by the headings. And sometimes when we're visual people and we don't use screen readers, and one of our presenters talked about ableism, we're assuming that people can see what's around other words. And if they're using a screen reader, that's not necessarily the case. So especially if they're using it for navigation. And there's different types of tools. Some just read whatever screen's on the whatever text is on the screen, and others are used for navigating sites. So anyway, headings are one element. The font and color is another example of something to consider when looking at your accessibility in your online document in particular. So with fonts, you want to ensure that they're clear and they're consistent. There's a lot of very elaborately designed fonts that are, well, a good bit difficult to read. And also, you don't want to use fonts, multiple different types of fonts unnecessarily throughout your document, as it can become distracting. So on this page, you'll see that the fonts are sans serif, which means that they don't have the little thin wings on the ends of the letters. Say a serif font would be Times New Roman. This one might be more like Arial or Verdana, and these are easier for the sighted person or even the partially sighted person to read. And I'm familiar with a person who I think has dyslexia and suggests ask that things be written in Arial 12 point uh, so that it can be read more easily by that person. The color, ensuring that a color has not been used as the only means to indicate meaning. And where that comes from is that color is not picked up by a screen reader. So if you have something, well, actually, I have an example that follows, I believe. So if the screen reader doesn't pick up color and you say, what do the red words mean? They're not going to know which words are red. So if you're going to use color, that you should use another text type of symbol or word that indicates the same thing as the color does. You can use both, but you need to ideally use at least the text version of something that the screen reader can pick up. So this is an example of that came, well, modified, but came from a course that said to the students, you see at the top, highlight the nouns in yellow and the verbs in green. For example, the quick brown, yellow highlighted fox jumped is in green over the fence that's highlighted in yellow as the noun. So this, if someone's using a screen reader, would be inaccessible, would be unavailable to them. They wouldn't know what was highlighted. So the alternative instructions that were created were below the line there on the second bottom half of the screen. Instructions indicate the nouns by adding the word. Oh, right. So the instructions, please basically indicate the nouns by adding the word noun in parentheses before the noun, and indicate the verbs by adding the word verb in parentheses before the verb. For example, the quick brown, noun in parentheses, fox, verb in parentheses, jumped over the noun in parentheses, fence. This way, the sighted user can use it, and the person who's using a screen reader can also use it. I'm sure the idea of highlighting words was probably from an on-campus activity or an in-class activity that they'd seen or used, where people had highlighters, were working with paper. And yeah, so this is to bring awareness that if a screen reader can't see, cannot recognize color. And I remember that was new to me. So I figure it's new to other people as well. So here's another example. On the left, now this one you can tell is a much more academic and veterinary parasitology focused. So on the left, people are the person who created this image included the arrows in different colors and then indicated the blue arrow, what it was pointing towards, the red arrow, and the text is also in the color of the arrow. Yeah, and the green arrow. So the problem with this is for the sighted user as well as the non-sighted user. So people who are colorblind have trouble distinguishing between red and green. They both kind of look gray, and then our blue is also kind of gray. Um, so it's not being very helpful. On the right, we've taken it one step further, so that a sighted user in particular could see that it's the label for the arrow for A is labeled, and B and C. Uh, we also tried to make the contrast between the arrows and the background greater, so that people with low vision could distinguish where the arrow was pointing. Now, if you had someone with the screen reader, this would still not be necessarily fully accessible, because um, the person, if they can't see the image, it's not telling them anything really. So you would need to have more in-depth description. And I have an example of that with parts of the brain as we go further. Oh, okay. So to go into hyperlinks, on the right is an example of hyperlinks that are embedded. So on my right, where it says click here and it's all blue, is an example of where text, the hyperlink is embedded. But if a person is using a screen reader, and the person who may have designed this page would have not realized that the person who uses the screen reader can ask, please read out all the links on the page. So the issue here is that the links are not unique. Actually, there's a few issues. But if you were using a screen reader and asked it to read out all the links, it would say, link, click here, link, click here, link, click here, link, click here. So it's obviously not giving the reader or the screen reader enough information to distinguish between the different links, or where they're going, what they're about, what type of document they're linking to. So on the left, we have sort of a one step closer to accessible. We have, it indicates now that it's the president's report. It indicates it's a PDF. The idea of saying click here, remember Carolyn would say it's sort of an old idea that before people knew what to do with hyperlinks, we would always need to say click here, so that they knew that that's what they needed to do in order for it to work. So it's sort of an older way of referring to things. So on the my left, if the screen reader was being asked to go through the PDFs or through the links, sorry, it would say link President Report 2020 PDF, link President Report 2019 PDF, and on and on. So a person who's listening to that would know, okay, what these links are about and where it would take them if they were to go there. But as a sighted person, it's very tempting to think, I know because I'm sighted and I thought, but surely it would read the few words before the link, but not necessarily. Actually, in that case, it doesn't at all. I'll just take a little breather. Are there any questions?
Well, Carol, we've had a little bit of activity in chat. First, I'll start off and tell you that you have greetings from David McDonald from the Johnston Hall team with a big, nice exclamation mark. I shared, where I work, we started using the free download of the Atkinson Hyperlegible font. So we've started incorporating that. So I put that into chat and someone was nice enough to find the Zoom link. Actually, it was David. And also Julie is looking at your one-step toolbox, and it says, she writes, it looks like a great starting point resource. Would you ever consider using a CC license on the site?
Absolutely. Um, and I almost surprised that it's not there. Sorry, that's my timer again, making sure that I'm staying on track. Um, yes, check the about part of the website. I can't remember now, but yes, we're all about having things open, and we've asked for permission. A lot of the sources are open. So if there's something there that's not open, I would think that it would be indicated. I hope that helps.
So I hope that answers the question, Julie, and I encourage everyone to keep them coming.
Great, thank you. Yeah, now I appreciate the opportunity to run through this, and you're trying to pare down your presentation so much, and now I have the opportunity to run. But I also appreciate, yeah, the questions and interest in this. So yeah, I just want to touch on the tables, use of tables and lists, because tables create problems for screen readers as well. Problems I had no idea of. And let me put a plug in for the University of Guelph's Accessibility Conference, which is online this year, I think at the end of May, where I learned a lot about this. They had speakers who were using screen readers, who were using them since birth, and they know screen readers more than I will ever know them. So I'm just here to help share some of the information that I've learned so far, but hoping to attend the screen reader, um, the accessibility conference at the University of Guelph again. And when it's online, it's even more accessible, at least to me. um, so with tables, use them with consideration. So basically pause when you go to put a table in your document, and consider, do you actually really need to use a table? If you do, they should have the following properties. They should have a title. They should have a header row. And I'll describe what that is shortly, but it basically gives a name to each of the columns. It's the very top row. I'll show an example. It should have no merged cells. And if you're like me, I was sort of recoiling when I was like, no merged cells, but that's hard. Should have no blank cells, because the screen reader sort of pauses um, the person who's listening doesn't know that there's anything in the cell. Has the screen reader broken? Even sometimes I think people put in a space just so that they know that the screen reader's reading the space. Excuse me. Information could be provided in an alternate format, so a list or a descriptive field. So really consider why you need the table. Is it necessary? And then we put lists together with this, because lists may be your alternative to your table, but then you need to use the built-in list styles and not construct them manually. So again, the screen reader doesn't read when you put in a hyphen and a space and it creates a bullet. It doesn't recognize that as a list. So again, the screen reader can read out lists for the person who's using it. And these, I think, are things that the average sighted person doesn't know about screen readers. So this is an example, certainly a common example, I think, of a list of assessments, where it basically, I think the table is used just to draw attention that these are your assessments. And in this case, it doesn't include, well, it doesn't have any context. So we don't know whether it has a title, but it certainly doesn't have a header row. This one, I used a simple example. It didn't have any merged cells, but certainly in a lot of tables that I see, there are merged cells and empty cells. But I thought, okay, just for this one, let's just see how we could take it one step closer to being accessible. So we basically just put a header row on it that explains what the columns are about. Um, so yeah, now when the screen reader reads it, it will say assessment assignment 1 annotated bibliography value 20%. Assessment, or it may even say row 2 assessment assignment 2 proposal value 30%. So that it's clear what's happening. Now, in this example, it may seem pretty obvious what's happening, but when you go and look at tables from now on, you'll realize how sometimes if somebody has not read the information surrounding the table, that it's really not clear what's going on here. And this is also a 2-column table, so it reads a bit like a list anyway. So it's not the worst example that I could find, but I wanted to make it seem something that was easily achievable, and it is. But sometimes it does require a bit of extra thought. Okay, and we started quarter after, so I have a couple of more points here. The audio, video, and image check. So with good design, purpose, and activity. So what that's saying is that, like in the example that I used for the biochemistry course, to ensure that there's a purpose for the video, that there's an activity, that there's something that they do with this, that there's a title, the source is clear, the length of time, so the duration of the video or audio, because there's a lot of great podcasts out there, that they're basic transcripts or captions, that there's really, I think the first bullet is of utmost importance. And when I've given this presentation before to another institution that was interested in accessibility, the feedback that I got from one of the people at the end, they said, you know, it's so common to just be given a link to a video with no explanation. You know, and she told that, you know, the story of having received, you know, multiple videos, no explanation, no duration. They go on for hours, not quite sure why they're watching them. It has some side purpose, you know. Is it required? I always think my students are busy. They have lots to do. And so I want to grab their attention by showing how this information is important. If you think you've skimmed the activity, you think you know what's in the video, try doing the activity. Okay. Or if you do the activity and realize that that you're having trouble with it, then you go back to the video with intention and with purpose to be able to do the activity. So very important that there's purpose, activity for the video or audio, explaining where the video or audio came from, because sometimes if it's a third-party source, then the link has died, and where are they then to go to find this possible video. With images, I just want to say that images, again, used with the intent, and so used with intent. So that the idea behind that is that they're not used for decorative purposes, that they are used that they're adding some value to the course, to the material, and to in text indicate what that intent is. So when I read through my earlier slides, I tried to describe the images that I used and how they were reflective of the content that I was talking about. So I did the territorial acknowledgement. I showed a picture of the territory and described it as well. There should be, so second bullet under images, explanatory title description. So there should be a caption. Alt text, if you're not familiar with it, is sort of the hidden text that the screen reader can pick up. So again, the screen reader can hear what images are on the screen by the screen reader going through the alternative text of the images. If they're there for decorative purposes, yes, sometimes they're given an empty string, which makes the screen reader skip over them. However, if you have text with copyright attribution or a title of some sort, the screen reader will pick that up, but it won't know what it's referring to. So it's just, okay, there's an attribution, but it appears that there's no image. So it's best to consider what is the purpose of the image and to give some brief explanation. And that explanation is, I think, best given by the subject matter expert, because just describing the image may not be focusing on the detail that's important to the person who is listening. And for that specific context, what is the important element of that image and why is it there? So the third bullet, image is described and explained in the surrounding text, which is basically what I was saying. Why is the image being used? What value is it providing? Is it an explanation of something that is there? So I'm going to have, oh yes, here's another quick one. And I'm aware of the time, it's 12:07. I have a few more slides there. I'm thrilled if there's anybody left here to showcase some of the elements that we've learned around accessibility and to consider it an innovation. It's not always used, and it's of most value and help to everyone. This slide is an example of a video that has some bookmarks in it. So I can't recall how long this video was. This was just a screenshot taken, but the demonstration is for the words at the bottom of the screen shot at the bottom of the player. To indicate where, if you click on that word, it will take you to that part of the video that's talking about, say, for example, emissions or risk. So that a student is not trying to scroll around, trying to go, okay, I watched the whole video, but now I just need to go back and double check the part on risk. Where was it? So yeah, and if you're getting into longer videos, this is most important. This is an example of a complex image, I think it's referred to as. And a lot of these images and examples are used in the website, so if you want to refer to them there. And there's also, I think, references of where these images, the sources that we got these images from. So if you were to take away everything except the image of the brain, you would have something that would be quite difficult to describe. And even with labels on the different parts of the brain, and it depends on what a person's needs are. So it's almost like it's never fully done. So that again is why we did the one step closer. Yes, adding the titles or the labels for the different parts of the brain are helpful. If you have a screen reader, it's not helpful because it may not be able to pick up because it's an image, and it would just have a descriptive text. So the caption you see underneath the image, so the caption in gray, figure caption, should not be part of an actual image. So if you're doing a screenshot, it shouldn't include the caption because the screen reader can't read the image. Um, in this example, it says the side view of the human brain anatomy showing from upper right in a clockwise direction, frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe. I should stop before I mispronounce something, but it's giving you positioning as well. So a clockwise direction. So if you're just listening to that description, you've got a sense of where things relate to one another. An alt tag you see on the right of my screen anyway. An alt text could indicate the figure name, the side view of the human brain anatomy showing from upper right in a clockwise direction, and lists them all. And okay, there we go. So this is for the extended version. I'm so glad I put these in. A summary: accessibility benefits not just a few, but the many. Um, when you design something so that it's accessible, people who really need it don't have to ask for it. It's like the grocery store door that opens for everybody. When you step in front of it, it recognizes a body and just opens. You don't need to say, I need help. And that's important. Designing accessible online courses, really a process of many small steps. And again, we point you to the onestep.truebox.ca. We welcome feedback. Our contact information, I think, is on the website. And okay. And I think I've probably used the whole hour. How am I doing?
You're doing fantastic. We actually have 3 minutes.
Oh, wow. And are there questions? I see the chat.
Yeah, we've had a few exchanges in chat, and
Okay.
one was from David, who said that we also use image transcripts for more complex content images, often of benefit to sighted students who are having a hard time understanding the purpose or the meaning of the image.
Yes.
I had a question for you, if I may.
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
invite everyone else to take advantage of Carol for the next 3 minutes. I heard that, for example, if we're designing an asynchronous course and we want to put in an image that doesn't necessarily have a meaning to it, I heard that we can put in that image and it doesn't even need an alt tag. Like, it's just something like for decorative purposes only. Is that something that we should be doing? We should be saying, could we be doing that?
Well, I'm sure different people have different opinions. And I remember when we were first learning about this, we said, okay, if we put in an image that's decorative, then we put in the empty string so that the screen reader doesn't pick it up. But then what do we do with the text that gives attribution of who owns the picture? So then we actually, because the screen reader doesn't read the text that's inside the picture, we included the attribution inside the picture and gave it the empty string. But then we thought, okay, if we're assuming even the sighted person is looking at this picture and wondering what it is, because sometimes we use pictures that are kind of abstract. And so it's there and it takes up the students' mental energy and time of thinking, okay, why is this picture here? What is it of? Do I need to know what it's of? They don't know if it's an empty string or if it's important or it's not. So I think being explicit with our purpose of why we're using an image, if it's decorative and it's clearly decorative, but there's a purpose for including decorative images, perhaps there's a rationale for it. I think you have to take it on a case-by-case basis, but as a general sweep, is it helping us to understand the information more? If it is, how so? What is it? Why are we using it? If it's because we figure it looks nicer.
Or sometimes we get the answer, well, it just breaks up the text a little.
It breaks up the text a little.
Asynchronous course.
Exactly. So what is what is the purpose of it breaking up the text? Maybe we should be doing something that's going to help them learn about the material in a non-text way. But if it's just a distraction, then, and people are confused about what it is and why it's there, then it's really adding to the cognitive load, one might say.
That's a great point. I see you've come on, David, but we are at the top of the hour. So I'll give you one more minute and then we'll wrap it up.
I'll just respond to that with those images or visual things that are there to break up the text. You can just describe it as such in the alt tag. So just that way it serves the same purpose through the screen reader.
Can you give me an example? Would you say decorative text, decorative image in the alt tag, or
page divider or section divider?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, or section divider image.
Yeah, if it has that purpose that it's dividing the text, then, and it's an image, then yeah, even labeling, that's the purpose of it.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah.
Thank you.
So,
I'm working on a tedious asynchronous course where I'll be applying some of what you've given me. I would like, so thank you, Carol. Thank you for taking up the whole hour. It's unfortunate that we lost our other speakers, but at least we, I think we're able to take advantage of your knowledge. Thank you everyone for participating. I invite you all to go back to our last Birds of a Feather session for today at the site. Thank you again. I will turn off the recording and I wish everyone a lovely rest of the day. And Carol, if you want to say a few last words.
Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to present at CNIE. I'm passionate about accessibility and about innovation and CNIE. So, and I'm thrilled, even though I'd rather be in Montreal, I'm thrilled with the online platform and how everything's moving. So thank you very much. And thank you, Barbara, for keeping us on track.